Well, clearly things have got to a point where something has to be resolved. I mean, there's more than a decade, 15 years of engagement with Indonesia through security services, through AFP, on trying to break people smuggler networks. That's been done in cooperation with the Indonesian authorities, but something clearly has gone wrong with that relationship.
What do you think's gone wrong? Where do you think that fracture has occurred?
Well, the perception that's been conveyed from the Indonesian side is that they're not being consulted. They don't see it as a partnership. That's the problem. If you work in a cooperative fashion, there's all sorts of things that need to happen behind the scenes. But if it's seen to be unilateral, or at least Australia is sort of pushing its weight and forcing Indonesia to take an unfair part of the deal, then I think there's been rising irritation over many months, but it's really come to a head now.
Irritation and possible resentment from the Indonesians?
Sure. Irritation, resentment, the sense that this is not a win-win solution, it's not an even partnership. Australia is simply pushing its problems back onto Indonesia.
And Greg, the head of Indonesia's military, basically defending his country's ability to adequately patrol its vast waterways, saying that the sea border's long, with our current military power, insufficient navy capabilities, some sectors were sometimes missed. So a sense that we're doing all we can from our end.
Oh, look, I think it's a very reasonable case for him to make. I mean, no one's denying that there isn't a problem with police corruption. Every police force around the world has a problem with corruption, and that's a factor in the people smuggling problem. So it's not like things are perfect on the Indonesian side. But the reality is, even if they completely got on top of the police corruption and controlled the networks, the length of the maritime borders, are such that it's just not possible to completely lock them down. So you can't say it's your problem to stop people leaving your waters, because it's just not technically possible.
We had that police report that our correspondent George Roberts has got hold of this morning, other journalists too, including photographs of wads of US dollars allegedly paid, we see those pictures now, to people smugglers, based on what you've just said about police in Indonesia and their involvement in some of this activity. How reliable are these reports? How much faith should we put in them?
Oh, I think we should approach them with some scepticism. I think there's no question that some in the Indonesian police have been culpable of corruption and collusion with people smugglers. We also get a sense, because the picture's not painted clearly to us, that for a long time, back to the previous Labor government, there have been payments made to try and elicit information from informers and to try and sort of get intelligence breakthroughs on those smuggler networks. The question is whether things have gone too far at this point.
Greg, what response should be coming now from the Australian government?
Well, I think the Australian government should go all out to say that this relationship with Indonesia is important. The problem that they're dealing with is a wicked problem. It's a problem with no easy solutions in terms of people smuggling. They've been doing their best, but clearly it's upset the relationship, and it's really important to get the relationship back right.
And that involves some resumption of leader-to-leader contact, in your view?
Yeah, it involves some resumption of leader-to-leader contact, certainly ministerial exchanges, and a return to the idea of a regional solution, because this is not a problem that's solvable by any one country unilaterally. It's not healthy to go down that route. And the rhetoric coming out of Canberra hasn't been helpful to the relationship, saying, we'll stop the boats by hook or by crook. That doesn't play well in terms of what it says about respect for Indonesia and our relationship. So we need to get back to a regional solution.
Greg, in terms of these bribery allegations, there's been some commentary around concerns that if they are in fact true, that people smugglers could then use fake asylum seekers, put them on boats, pretend that they're asylum seekers in order to be given some bribes. How plausible do you think that would be? Look,
it's certainly plausible, and it points to the fact this is a wicked problem. It's a problem where there's just every answer has its downfall. Paying informers to get information about people smuggler networks, that sort of makes sense, but at a certain point you cross a line. And if you're actually being seen to offer inducements for people to bring boats out and take money, well, obviously that's counterproductive. So it's a very hard thing to get right. But the thing is, we can't get it right just by ourselves. We've got to do it in cooperation with the Indonesian authorities.